tables in a restaurant in a West End town. Call the police, there's a madman around, running down underground to the dive bar in a West End town. In a West End town, a dead end world, the East End boys and West End girls. In a West End town, a dead end world, the East End boys and West End girls. West End girls.
Yeah, there's the Pet Shop Boys. Another group that Bill DeFabio would have no idea who it is. But
See, when you're here, I can play all this other stuff.
it's lovely, yeah. And I never ask you what to play. You just play. Oh, once in a while I ask you to play something special, but usually not. I trust you. Yeah, so this is Butch Maxwell. I'm in for Bill DeFabio if you're just joining us. And last hour was talking a little bit about the coronavirus and what's going on. And then an even bigger disease, I opened up when I started talking about the passing of Rush Limbaugh, radio talk show host. And I had mentioned that I had made a little pithy remark. That's P-I-T-H-Y, by the way. pithy remark about Rush Limbaugh. I said, "Bye, Rush, not going to miss you." I said that on Facebook yesterday, and I just got so many comments. Many of them supportive, but quite a few to really take me to task and saying that I had no class for speaking that way. And my point, I really do take such criticisms seriously and to heart to some degree, and do what I think most people should do. So do a little self-reflection. Gee, was I too impulsive when I did that? Because it was impulsive. I just the minute I heard it, I just posted it and moved on. So I thought, was that really a cruel thing? Did I hurt somebody by doing that? I think the answer to all of those things is no. I don't think I really hurt anybody. I don't think Rush Limbaugh's children, or he didn't have children, did he? Yeah, he had one wife and 3 ex-wives. Did I hurt any of them? Who did I really hurt in this? I don't think I really hurt anybody. And did I say something that was untrue? No, I had no respect for him when he was alive. Should I now suddenly have respect for him? So no, I don't. So that's the recap. But I did want to mention, we started talking a little bit about the fairness doctrine, and we did have a caller come in. If you want to chime in now on this.
Yes, please call us back. I told you to call it.
Yeah, I'd love to engage somebody on this because I think it's an important thing. The fairness doctrine, the history of this was basically, here's the idea of the fairness doctrine. It was administered by the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. It wasn't really even introduced until 1949, but it basically said that broadcasters, which is radio and television, on broadcast, not on cable because there really wasn't much cable in those days, but broadcasters have to devote some airtime to discuss controversial matters of the public interest and to air contrasting views regarding those matters. And so that was the rule from 1949 until 1987. But starting in 1987, those rules were basically thrown away. And a lot of people equate this also with the equal time rule. It's not really quite the same thing. Equal time only deals with political candidates. You have to give political candidates equal time, and that rule still is on the books. But the idea, the fairness doctrine of, so for example, I'm out here speaking against Rush Limbaugh and everything he stood for. If the fairness doctrine was still in place, I would have to give a balance to the other side of the argument. I don't want to say equal time, but rather just letting someone else talk. And here's the other side of the issue. So, and that seems kind of fair. The idea is that then you can make up your own mind. So that basic doctrine was repealed, and that is what gave advent to talk radio shows like some of the ones that we carry here or originate from here, where we've got opinionated hosts. And Howard Monroe has definite opinions. Butch Maxwell has very definite opinions too. But you've also got the Sean Hannitys and the Rush Limbaughs of the world too. it really gave rise to the conservative talk radio movement. Now, there were two other rules that weren't rolled out of the Fairness Doctrine, which are kind of interesting. They're kind of corollary rules. One was the personal attack rule, and another was a political editorial rule. Now, both of those have since gone by the wayside, too. The personal attack rule just means that whenever a person or even a group of people is subject to a personal attack during a broadcast, then the stations have to notify such persons or groups within a week of the attack and send them transcripts of what was said and give them the opportunity to respond on the air. The political editorial rule applied to when a station itself broadcast editorials endorsing or opposing candidates for public office. And it stipulated that unendorsed candidates had to be notified and allowed a reasonable opportunity to respond. Now, both of those were repealed in October of 2000. That means now this radio station could go out there and support I don't know, any reprehensible person you think, and you couldn't say anything about it. You wouldn't have a right. Now, this station would never do that because I know the owners, and they just aren't like that. They are not going to silence opinions, and in fact, we offer the opportunity for callers to call in all the time. And that's something that I try to encourage too. So that's your little education on the Fairness Doctrine, coming to you from a communications scholar of sorts. So now you know what gave rise to Rush Limbaugh. So I guess our caller is not going to come call back about.
I was hoping he would. I
well,
haven't talked to him in a long time.
Yeah, well, maybe he will. Maybe he's just busy and he'll catch up with this. Meanwhile, Ted Cruz. Oh boy, Ted Cruz. He just went to Cancun, Mexico, and his state is of Texas is of course suffering with where there are millions without power or water and
below
zero. People can't drive anywhere. Grocery stores are closed there. My wife's daughter is living there now. She's had no power for days. She's lucky that she has a gas stove, so she can heat up water, because she can't even, she can't bathe or anything.
Yeah.
It's just, it's a terrible situation, and they're definitely not used to this. This is absolutely part of our climate change challenge, which a lot of Texas politicians are in denial of, by the way.
Yeah.
And Cruz should be. He has no state duties, but he is a statewide elected federal representative. It would have been good form for him to stay in Texas and maybe provide some help. Take a look at your opponent in the last election. Beto O'Rourke's down there just rolling up his sleeves and trying to help people.
Yeah. Jeez.
So, I don't know. Now, Cruz, I guess to his credit, he has. He's been kind of repentant when he came back. He said it was a mistake. In hindsight, I wouldn't have done it, stuff like that.
Same old. From either side.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't.
Yeah, that's true.
All the ones that get caught doing something that they shouldn't be doing.
Yep. Okay, well, I can think of one recently powerful politician who's never apologized. So I guess I've got to give credit for Ted Cruz that he's got maybe a notch up on that guy. But, the way he said it, the way he justified it was that he said his daughter wanted him to go and he was just trying to be a good dad.
Yeah, that they were cold. They'd been without power for 3 days and they wanted to go somewhere warm.
Yeah.
Don't you think all of Texas wants to go somewhere warm?
Right. Yeah, fly everybody down there, Ted.
Yeah.
It's just a little bit crazy. But you know what? Ted Cruz, he was just elected. He's got another 5 years of his
Does he?
term. Yeah, he was just reelected. Well, no, was it 18? It was 18 that he was reelected. So he's got 4 years to go yet now. A little less.
Oh, I was hoping it was that he would be up in 2.
No.
Because even in 2 years, everybody right now that is angry with him, and they'll forget as soon as their power comes on and their water lines get fixed.
Oh yeah.
They'll forget.
Yeah, they will. They will. Yeah. I just moved in the past few years. I moved from Elm Grove to another neighborhood where we're a little bit rural. We're outside of the city, and so for the first few years I lived there, we kept getting power outages. Our power lines would go down, and just because they're through the trees, and anytime anybody sneezes, it just seems like a power line went out. Well, I finally invested $10,000 into a generator, got it installed this past June, and the power has never gone off. I'm just like, you know what? It finally went off the other day, and it was off for like 2 days, like 48 hours.
You did?
And yes, yeah. So I am so grateful now. Just so grateful that I had power, because that's a terrible thing to
When I first moved on the island too, I don't think we were ever out for more than a day, but our power kept, at least once every 2 months, there'd be a power shortage.
Yeah,
and I thought about it at the time, and being poor, I just said, you know what, we'll just have to suffer,
yes.
with
and
oil lamps and
most
that
people
kind of
will
stuff.
do.
Yeah.
$10,000, that's a lot of money. You can get maybe a little, 9,000 or something. I guess you can get something for about 5,000 that you have to go out and actually crank up yourself and plug your propane tank in and stuff.
Probably for $100 we can get a squirrel that'll run in the tank too.
That's true. Yeah, but you want to be able to power your heat and some light at least. And
your refrigerator.
Yeah, and your refrigerator.
Big.
Sure. Yeah. So
although those people in Texas, they just pulled everything out of their fridge and put it outside. Everything froze.
Yeah.
They're good.
They're that's I really feel badly for the people of Texas. They've
Here's the bad thing in Texas now. It's going to go up over the weekend up to 60.
Wow.
So now you're going to have the double threat of flood because
Yeah.
all that snow has got to start going somewhere.
Yeah.
What a mess.
That's going to be terrible. Do they have basements in Texas?
You know what? I don't know.
I'm not sure, but
I don't know, but if you live like in Houston, Dallas, there's nowhere for the water to go.
Yeah.
That was the problem with Harvey.
Yeah.
Was, all this rain came.
Yeah.
And they don't have any green space. They don't have anywhere.
Yeah.
It just goes on the.
Because they're not used to getting that much rain there either. And, basically it's a desert there. So, really, really tough. And once again, our politicians, I don't know. Let's move on to another politician to talk about, Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley, her theory is of the case is that she runs for president in 2024. She's a Republican. It's pretty simple. I'm the parts of Donald Trump that you liked without any of the parts you didn't like.
That's her slogan?
That's her. Well, no, that's sort of. She actually did literally say that in an interview with Politico's Tim Alberta recently. Here's the exact quote. I think what we need to do is take the good that he built, leave the bad that he did, and get back to a place where we can be a good, valuable, effective party. Sorry. Sure, that makes sense, except there's 0% chance that Trump or the base that he commands is really going to go along with that plan. Nikki Haley reached out to former President Trump on Wednesday to request a sit-down at Mar-a-Lago. But a source familiar says that he turned her down. The two haven't actually spoken since the insurrection on January 6th, when Haley blasted Trump for his inciting the supporters to storm the Capitol. So he has not forgiven her. Now Nikki Haley, probably, otherwise has a pretty bright future in the Republican Party. She's doesn't seem to be the extreme Tea Party wing of the party, and is pretty bright, and she's got a heritage of having worked in politics. So I don't know. This is all up in the air. Whether the Trump wing of the party prevails with Republicanism. Or not could be really telling, and I guess we're going to see in the next couple of years how this works out. There's still incredible support for the former president within the Republican Party. Some figures going as high as 80% Where are all of the reasonable Republicans? I don't know. They're still around, but I don't know whether they're actually going to be able to make a big comeback.
What I'm really curious about is if the Republican Party stays fractured as it is now,
Yeah.
will there be an offshoot of basically a third party?
Third party, right.
And I'm really curious.
That would, of course, serve the Democrats very well, and I think the Republicans are quite aware of that. But when you just really can't abide, the sexism and the racism and the nationalism and all those other ugly isms of your party, then and yet you don't want to go over to the other side, then maybe it is a good thing, and maybe this will evolve so that there will be a strong conservative party without the crazies, and maybe the crazies will be left in what's the remnants of the Republican Party. I don't know. That's interesting to think. I said I wanted to get some fun stuff today because it is a variety hour, and I know Bill doesn't normally talk politics too much, so we can talk about other things. I think is this Mark Twain's birthday? I'm not sure, but something came up recently that I thought was kind of interesting. Some interesting facts about Samuel Clemens, otherwise known as Mark Twain. He's really kind of up there with our literary icons, with William Shakespeare, or Edgar Allan Poe, or Charles Dickens, or Ernest Hemingway. But for most, though, his most famous works, like The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Adventures of Huckleberry Finn, are generally more memorable than his biography. But his biography is really kind of fascinating. And then he really traveled very widely. He did undergo a great deal of tragedy in his life. He collaborated with people that you might not be aware of. And he was even said to be a dead-on-the-money psychic. So just a few interesting things. He wrote a pornographic story once. It was an Elizabethan pornographic story. That most people don't realize that Twain occasionally penned smut, but he did. He wrote something called 1601. It was named for the year of its settings, and it was probably the most famous literary pornography around, which is why he published it anonymously in 1880. But it's since been traced back to him, and of course his style is all over. So I've not read it, but I'm gonna have to look up.
I gotta get it. I'm just curious as to how smutty it can really be.
Twain had a fascination with steamboats, and he worked on a vessel called the Pennsylvanian that was on the Mississippi River, and he actually got his younger brother Henry, a job on the same ship. But not long after, Henry, who was only 19 at the time, was killed when a broiler exploded on the ship, and Twain was just devastated by it. In fact, he had a premonition about it. He dreamed about it, and then it came true. He was actually another interesting thing about him was that he was a patented inventor, and he actually worked with Tesla, Nikola Tesla. Twain didn't really invent anything that we normally think of as being useful today, but he came up with a few things: a variation on garment fasteners, which were like suspenders, and a self-pasting scrapbook, which was basically kind of like having these pages with glue right on them, so you just kind of tap them right down. Never really caught on that much, but years later, the Post-it note was invented, so maybe there was a precursor to that too. There is convincing evidence that he had a sense of things happening. According to his mother, he predicted his 9-year-old sister's death when he was 4, and there were also occasions involving friends, including one that was recounted in a 1891 article called Mental Telegraphy in Harper's. And in it, Twain recalls a time when a friend of his visited Washington, D.C., and although he didn't coordinate with that friend beforehand, he was browsing in a shop when the man suddenly came into his mind, and he knew with startling specificity that if he left the shop, turned left, and walked 10 feet, his friend would be standing there, and he was right. Now, we don't have anybody to corroborate that, but that's what Twain said. Another thing, I did know this before, but I think it's kind of interesting, is that his birth dates and death dates coincided exactly with Halley's Comet. He was he was born 2 weeks after the comet's appearance in 1835, and he also predicted that he would die the day after its return in 1910, and he did. He did. Amazing. How many people do you know of that could actually predict the date of their death? So that, I think, is kind of fascinating. So that's sort of my update on Samuel Clemens, a.k.a. Mark Twain. And when we get back after the break, after our last little mid-break here on the Variety Show, we're going to talk about a couple of live events that are happening. So, if you want to get out of the house this weekend, I've got a couple of suggestions for you. And if you want to stay in the house, I've got some suggestions for you for things that you can stream. If you have some streaming services anyway, I'm going to name off a number of them. And we'll also do the Oldies calendar, which we're going to do is in tribute to Bill DeFabio, who is just on vacation today. He will be back on Monday. And you are listening to Butch Maxwell guest hosting for Bill DeFabio on The Variety Show right here on the Watchdog Network.
Frio Stack & Associates Auctioneers, Realtors, Certified Appraisers specializing in antiques, business liquidations, multi-parcel land auctions. Frio Stack & Associates is a regional business offering the executor, attorney, agent, and other individuals the most comprehensive and technologically advanced auction and appraisal services available. For information on our service, call our office at 304-233-3168 or email frioauc@aol.com. Frio Stack & Associates sells the earth and everything.
In a divided year, we can still be united through giving. There's a $300 above-the-line tax deduction this year thanks to the CARES Act. You can take a $300 deduction for charitable donations. As an organization that promotes giving, the United Way of the Upper Ohio Valley encourages you to utilize this tax deduction. Consider making a donation to a nonprofit agency with a cause that's important to you. Any donation made to the United Way will go towards our annual campaign supporting local programs